Okay, just a little bit more about myself, software security architect, and I got a couple of certifications. As many of you can recognize, these are well-known certifications. I've been involved with OWASP for 10 years at least, and I was one of the original people who set up this conference, and I've been volunteering from the start. So my work in the past 15 years often involves cryptography during my research, consulting, mostly security consulting, and risk assessment. I've done a whole bunch of those. Building a security program and lead security communities. I work for Gemalto, which is a digital security company. We provide products and services around the world to protect identities, including personal identities, machine identities, and also protect the data. Because we're a security company and we take security very, very seriously. And for our products, we have a set of security requirements, which all the products have to satisfy. Among these set, we have a set of crypto requirements. And so I'm going to share with you part of those as giving back to the community, and it has proven to be very valuable to Gemalto, and I hope it will be helpful for other companies and for you as well. So why do we talk about crypto? It's been there for decades for you, so why we're still talking about it. So let's look at the reality of the cyberspace. We often talk about the cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. So what is the reality? And Gemalto tracks of the cyberspace, the data breach records. We publish, we call it breach level index every 6 months. So this is the most recent publication. As we can see here, the data records compromised in the first half of 2018 is 4.5 billion records compromised just in the first half of 2018. And if you look at it a little bit more detail, and it's 25 million every day and 290 every second. And among these data breaches, we have found less than 3% of breaches we call secure breaches, where encryption has rendered the stolen data useless. And then you can think of 97% of the data records which have been stolen or be compromised. Either they are not protected or they are not using proper encryption. So the attacker can actually get those data. So the data in general, that basically give us a picture. The data records, those are personal data, sensitive data, are not well protected, even if we have already regulations like HIPAA, like GDPR, and so on and so forth. So some other statistics here, and among these breaches, 65% of them is due to identity theft. So what does that mean? Our identities, people, machines, organizations, are not well protected. So then what is the business impact of these? Let's see, identity theft. We saw 65% of them caused by identity theft. So what are the business impact if a business, their data records are stolen? And who remember the target breaches, which is a few years ago. Okay, so there are many breaches. I use this because we have data. So in 2013, yeah, we have a target breach that was affected to many, many people, 110 million customers, including myself. And then Target, you receive the email, they offer free credit monitoring for a year. And actually, after the free year, I'm still continue using it. And I'm just paying every year. And so it's 110 million customers were affected, their credit card numbers, and their other mailing address, phone number, and other information. The cost to Target after this breach is $140 million. And this includes many things, including, for example, buy insurance for me and the other 110 million users. And that affect their sales. People won't come to Target to buy or just come with cash. That affects their sales. And they have to completely revamp their infrastructure. They are one of the first to set up the complete smart card-based the transaction. And they have to rebuild many parts of their systems. And they have to deal with litigations. So there are a lot of things involved because they had the breach, right? It's a lot of money for Target. So what do we do? Oh, I forgot another thing. We also talk about identity. We talk about the company. We talk about let's talk about the individuals. So with identity theft, what do people, attackers, adversaries, what do they do with those identities? They do identity fraud. They either sell the identities or use that to do other things. For example, we heard the news a couple of years ago, some teenagers, they worked for a couple of years since they're 12 and they're just hoping to buy a car at 16. And then when he tried to get a car loan, then they realized that he already had 2 mortgages and 3 cars on his name with his Social Security number. So it's a big impact for individuals. If we look at the data on 2016, there's 15 million of US identity fraud victims that cost the consumers and the companies in 2016 $16 billion. So these, because the identity are not well protected, the data are not well protected. Then what do we do? What tool can we use to protect cyberspace? Of course, there are many tools. We also always talk about the defense in depth. We can protect the infrastructure. We can protect. We can have a firewall. We can have all these scanning tools. We can have DevSecOps, like this conference is really. I often talk about with many schemes, many methods. But one of the fundamental. One of the most important tools is actually cryptography for identity and data protections. So what can cryptography help us? And I assume most of you here are very familiar with the topic, so we go very quickly on this. So when we build a system, we want to have security objectives. So cryptography can help us to achieve these objectives. So it can help us for confidentiality. For example, we have data encryption and the integrity. That is to assure the data, the system is not modified and in an unauthorized fashion, and we want to keep the system available, and we want authenticity to be able to verify someone or some system is what it claims to be, and it's a genuine one. And authorization, we have access control and the non-repudiation. We want to make sure someone cannot claim that he didn't do something. So that's we can use digital signature. So with cryptography, it can help us to achieve many of these objectives, to keep the system, the data, the identities safe. However, the cryptography, we also often just say crypto, because cryptography is too hard to say. We say crypto. However, crypto is not a panacea, and only a proper use can help a system to achieve its security objectives. But getting it right, it's very hard, actually. So so actually crypto is hard. I guess it's one of the reasons I wish we have more people to understand this point. So it is very difficult to design crypto algorithms. So we talk about the algorithm itself, the protocols, the different mode, and etc. And that really requires special trainings and special skills. It's mathematicians, cartographers, like with Gmoto is a security company. And my colleagues and I have been working in the field for over 10 years, but we can't do this. We have many real cartographers, very, very smart people. They can work on the cryptography topic. So designing these crypto is very hard. And implementing it is very difficult as well. And once we have an algorithm standardized, published, and when you want to implement, it's not easy either. And anyone of you recognize this symbol? Yes, yes. So that's the OpenSSL vulnerability. It's called a heartbleed. So it's a bug in the OpenSSL library. It was there for over 2 years before people discovered it. It is a very widely used library, but this bug was there for 2 years. And attacker and the thief will be able to utilize this basically to discover private keys, sensitive information, private keys, passwords, session cookies. And there are some companies, there are some institutions who suffered from this. One example is Canada Revenue Agency. And they reported the theft of, they don't call social security number, they call social insurance numbers that belong to a large number of taxpayers that was stolen because of this vulnerability. That's pure implementation. It's not SSLs or TLS vulnerability, it's a pure implementation. And as we all understand, crypto is very hard to understand. If you, I tried many times to try to read what does AES really mean, what is actually the algorithm doing. It is very hard for me to, at least, to comprehend. Okay, it's very hard to understand, and also it's very hard to use it properly. That's why we have this talk. When you want to use a crypto API, and especially low level, if you're higher level, it may not give you enough flexibility and not enough properties as you need. And then if you use a lower level crypto, and it's hard. It's not easy. And what algorithm to use, what parameter, what key length, and so on and so forth. So it is hard. On the other hand, crypto is actually very attractive. Maybe because it's hard, it's very attractive. And the system builders, defenders, like people like us, we use crypto to protect our systems. And also, we have a lot of malicious attackers who discovers, who work hard actually, and to poke into system, poke into crypto to discover vulnerabilities and try to exploit exploit those, like the heartbeat. And then, of course, we have lots of those researchers, very smart, a lot of very smart people around the world. They are trying to discover and mitigate or fix the crypto vulnerabilities. As we all know, the algorithm we use evolves. We'll talk a little bit later. Evolves over time. That's because initially you design a very good algorithm. After maybe 20 years, somebody is able to break those. So the researchers, they are constantly poking and discovering vulnerabilities and also trying to build a better algorithm. So we do have a lot of smart people around the world. Many of these algorithms actually is through competition and eventually become standard. And so it's on one hand it's very hard, on the other hand it's very attractive to people in all aspects of life, actually, all aspects of information. So of course there are curious people who just want to know what's going on. Okay, so the vulnerabilities in cryptos, its impact is very high. And here is another example. Have you heard of ROCA? It's called the return of Coppersmith attacks that happened last year. It's a weakness, a bug in the Infineon chip crypto library. And this chip, Infineon chip, is being used by many applications. For example, smart cards. Gimoto was a smart card company before it became a digital security company. So we still make smart cards. And many smart cards in the world use Infineon chip. And then in the smart card, you have you write your algorithm, and then you will use Infineon's crypto library. So this is the bug in their crypto library that will enable attackers to recover RSA private key from the public key. So this is a serious problem. And then consider all these smart cards, the identity cards. Many countries in Europe, they use smart card as identity card, and health card, TPMs, and even the FIDO tokens. So that's the Ubico token. So many of these products use Infineon chips. They are affected. The impact is very high. So given this, we talk about crypto is very hard, it's very useful, it's very attractive. My recommendation is do not create or implement your own crypto because of all these reasons that we have talked earlier. And instead use standard crypto algorithm and the libraries. In US, for example, the standard we can reference to NIST publications. The next concept I want to talk about is called security strengths. Do you familiar with the concept? Security strengths. Okay, so we said, okay, we use a standard, we don't create our own crypto. We want to use crypto to protect our data and identity. And what algorithm do we use? What key length should we use, right? And how do we measure that? So security strength is actually a number associated with the amount of work, the number of operations, for example, the number of encryptions. So associated with the number of amount of work that is required to break a crypto algorithm or a system. So that is a number. That is not, I was mentioning this to my son. And he said, well, that's an NP-complete problem. And I said, well, but this security strength, we're talking about a practical number. And so practically, it is measured in bits. So that's the complexity of the best known attacks up to date now to recover the secret of private key. So if the security strength is n, that means the complexity of the attack is 2 to the power of n. So that's how we measure the security strength. So it's measured in bits. It is important to notice it's different from key length. Key length is also measured in bits. For example, triple dash key length is 168 bits, but it provides at most 112 bits of security because the attack of complexity 2 to the power of 112 exists. Okay? So remember, when you want to choose a crypto algorithm or the key length, you're considering the security strengths. So if we're using crypto with low security strength, what happens? Right? It is not safe. The key can be cracked when the security strength is low. And here we give an example. Right? So the data encryption standard, also called DES, was approved as a standard in 1976. So it was developed early on, and NIST had a competition and wants to have the best algorithm. So that's the algorithm was standardized. And 20 years later, it was broken. Okay, so in 1998, to break a DES key, we require 56 hours. And nowadays, if you use GPU, and it becomes practical. Okay, we can see 2017, and a plain text attack with a specific chosen text is in 25 seconds. So when your algorithm has weak security strengths, the key can be cracked, it can be recovered. So the standard institutions in US, that will be NIST, in European countries, that they called society. There's a name for it. It's called society. It's called SOS-IS. It's a society of, I can't remember, but there are standard institutions that define the standard. The current recommendation is to use at least 112 bits security strength. And so you can look at NIST publication to look at their recommendation. There's also a convenient website. It's called tlens.com. And if you go there, and it lists all the different institutions, standard groups. And you can go there. In this particular snapshot, I go to NIST. And you can also go to the bottom one, for example, the BSI, that's the European standard body. You can look at the different institutions, the recommendations from different institutions. And so here is the example from NIST. So we say we need to use at least 112 bits security strength. So what does that mean? How does it translate to algorithm and the key length? So with 112 bits security strength, for security encryption, you have to use at least triple dash. Okay, 3 key dash, triple dash, not 2 key. And for hash, for signature, we need to use SHA-2. So at least SHA-224. And then for RSA, the key size have to be at least 2048. And then for Diffie-Hellman, we have to use key length at least 224, so you can go on from here. For elliptic curve, it's 224 to, yeah. So this is the NIST recommendation is now to 2030. What is the thing that most concerned to everyone at this point? Quantum computing. That's one of the things that's very much concerned. On one hand, there's a lot of malicious parties, and there's security researchers, so they try to break into this algorithm. And on the other hand, it's the quantum computing that's also play into the picture. And institutions like NIST, right now they have a competition for algorithms that won't be broken, will be, they call it quantum safe. So in case quantum computing come out, all these asymmetric key algorithms like RSA or elliptic curve asymmetric key algorithm can be broken relatively easier. Okay, so that's why to be more quantum resistant, we'll need to use the algorithm and the keys with higher security strengths. At least it make it a little bit harder by quantum computing before we have quantum resistant algorithm. So with that, that's the minimum recommendation. The European, okay. So I couldn't remember this SOC-IS. So that's called Senior Officials Group on Information Security. That's a European Council for recommending the crypto. So based on the NIST, it's from now to 2030, we can use this algorithms, but with European recommendation, it's much closer. They are by 2020, and you have to move into higher security strengths. Okay, so given these are the basic recommendation. We can we'll get to do not use obsolete algorithms because attacks exist for obsolete crypto algorithms. I have some examples here. As we know, single death or triple death with 2 keys should not be used anymore because they don't have enough security strength. With triple death with 2 keys, the security strength is about 80. So it's not strong enough. The exception, some old standard like EMV standard for payment is still allowed to use, but they have been working on the next generation of even EMV standards. It's, I don't know, 20-year-old standard. And we should not use SHA-1 for authentication purpose. And as we saw earlier, we can still use SHA-1 if you do HMARC SHA-1. Do the crypto hash is still okay, but we should not use SHA-1 for signature anymore. And similarly for MD5, we remember, if you remember a long time ago, all the signature is MD5, and then we moved to SHA-1. Why we should not use them anymore? Because of the potential, because of the collision attacks. So in the mid 2000, researchers have found these collision attacks. So with these, what does that mean? If the collision. So collision means you different text, you resolve the same hash. That means if you have a certificate for one domain, it is possible to impersonate another domain. And the researchers have shown this possibility. And then you can also impersonate a certificate authority. So you can impersonate any domain if you use the weak algorithm, right? And then the attackers can behave as man in the middle for any website. Another example is do not use CEB, the electronic cookbook, as a mode. Triple death CEB or AES, we should not use it anymore because ECB. For the ECB mode, the plain text as input, identical plain text as input will generate identical ciphertext blocks. And here is a well-known example. So little penguin was sitting there, and if you use a block cipher to encrypt it, you can still kind of tell the little penguin. But if you use other mode, it completely look like a white noise. So in the middle, and that means the confidentiality is not preserved. We're not providing enough confidentiality. So we need to remember to not use obsolete algorithms. Now, with these crypto algorithms, we all have keys, right? We use key to do encryption, we use key to do signature, or even compute crypto hash, cryptographic hash. And then how do we protect the key, right? So how do we protect a key during its transfer? It's very often you need to transfer a key, for example, shared secret from one place to another. To protect it, we use another key to encrypt the key to be transferred. So we call that a wrapping key or key encryption key. And another case is we call the storage key. That is the key to protect the data encryption key. When we have data, we want to encrypt it. We have data encryption key. And then we want to protect that key, that what we call storage key. That's key encryption key. So the security strength of a wrapping key or key encryption key must be greater than or equal to the strength of the protected key. Why is that? Right? So if the wrapping key is weaker, then attacker can just try to recover the wrapping key and then use that key to decrypt the protected key. That's why the wrapping key has to be stronger or at least equal to the protected key. How many different kind of keys? We know there's encryption key, we know there's signature key. How many different kind of keys? Just a rough number. No? That's a rough number. 3? Okay. So encryption, signature, hash. Okay, 3 types. Okay, that's the main 3 types. And so NIST, in the NIST publication, that's actually a good publication to look at, the SP 857. It talks about the key management. And there are 19 different cryptographic key types. Okay, so you're right, we have the signature. We also have key for authentication, for data encryption, for key wrapping, random number generation, and key transport, key agreement, authorization. So on and on. So there are 19 different kinds of cryptographic key types. So can we use one key for more than one purpose? For example, I want to use the key for authentication as well as for encryption. So the answer is no. A cryptographic key should not be used for more than one purpose. I can give you several reasons for this. So why we have single purpose? One reason is the security. Okay, imagine we have a RSA key pair, and the primitive of signing and the decryption are the same operation. Okay, so imagine we use primitive, meaning basic operation, and we use it to do signature, and also we use it to decryption. And if the attacker can get an encrypted message, he can trick the party who wants to authenticate to as the authentication message, and then that effectively decrypted message. So to solve this problem, that's why we have a hash. That's one reason we have a hash. However, for resource-constrained systems, for smart card, like IoT devices, they are very small devices, have limited computing resource. They can have the hash computed outside and only do the decryption part for for signature, right? And similarly for authentication, in many cases, the authentication, you send a challenge, and then the server or the client, they will use their private key to, the client will use their private key to encrypt this challenge and then send it back. And then if you use the same key for decryption, then you can send an encrypted message pretending to be authenticating, trying to authenticate the client. And then the client use the same private key doing the same operation will effectively, the response is the plain text message, okay? So we should not use a single key for multiple purposes. Another reason is actually key escrow. And as we know, the enterprise often escrows encryption keys. And in Gemalto, we use smart card for doing the email encryption. We also use smart card for authentication, and we have all different types of keys. The encryption key is often escrowed, right? Because after you change your job, you left Gemalto, and then you left the company, and the company still want to be able to decrypt the message, right? And or you change your badge. So the encryption key is often escrowed, but the signature key should be with the owner for non-repudiation purpose. Only the owner should have the encryption key, the signature key, signature key. So for escrow purpose, different keys are protected differently. That's another reason we should not use a single key. So the user-chosen password should not be used directly as cryptographic keys, as we described earlier, because it can be hacked, it can be stolen. What we want is to use a key derivation function. So we use a key derivation function if the password is the only secret available. You know, ideally, we want to generate secret, and we have enough randomness. But the only information you have available and based on your application context is a password. In that case, we want to use a key derivation function. It has to be a one-way function, and we have to have sort and etc. And we have to have a sufficient number of iterations. So in this case, the BPKDF2, we have password, we have, for each user we need to use a sort, and the iteration is what is called a cost factor. So the higher the iteration, the higher for the attacker to attack your system. And come out is the key that depends on your system, what hash algorithm you will use to generate this key. Okay, so the last thing, but not the least thing I want to talk about is to protect your private and secret keys. So now we talk about the private or secret key. It's used for digital signature. It provides authenticity and integrity, and also used for decryption that provide the confidentiality. So what happens if the attackers get these keys, right? And your system is screwed, basically. And I give you one example. I'm not sure you're familiar with this system. It's called one login. So one login, it's basically an online password manager. It makes sense, right? And many of us use password manager. And because there's so many passwords we have to deal with. So one login is a online password manager, also provide single sign-on service. The customer basically log into their account, and then the one login will remember, this password manager will remember, and then supply the passwords to other applications. In this way, the customer can have users, right? Can have many users. And then in this case, the customer and their users don't have to remember all the passwords to all the applications. Let's see this enterprise want to use. So one login actually have many customers. They have over like 2,000 companies in many countries use their service. They have hundreds of app vendors and many software as service providers to use their service. So we assume they keep our passwords secure. So last year they had a security breach. They detected unauthorized access to their data. Remember, their data are users' passwords, basically. And so what they found after investigation is basically somebody gained access to their AWS keys. They use AWS cloud service to host their service. If you're familiar with AWS, in order to access AWS service, you have to have programmatically, you have to have secret keys. For every single API request, you have to apply your key. You don't send the key, but use the key for signature for your request. And then they found out some threat actor, attacker basically, they somehow get access to their AWS keys. That means they can use those keys to access AWS API to access their database. And from there, they basically access their database tables and can get the information about the users, applications, and the various type of keys. All right, so it's a big impact not only to this company, but to all the thousands of companies, and I don't know, a large number of users these companies have. It's a big impact to them. Right, and the attacker can access the applications they use. So we really have to protect the private keys and the secret keys from unauthorized access, disclosure, modification, and the deletion. And then the level of protections will depend on the risk level of the key disclosure. You can have software protection, and can have advanced software protection, for example, KMS with a software security module, or better use hardware protection like HSMs. So here is the summary, what we have talked this morning. Any questions? No? All right, thank you for your attention.